It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Amin Tarzi. Amin comes to us from the Marine Corps University in Quantico, where he directs the Middle East Studies program. Amin actually has spoken at this is the third History Institute in a row, so we've been very pleased with his contributions. Dr. Tarzi worked as a senior research associate at the Middle East, for the Middle East at the Center for Nonproliferation Studies at the Monterey Institute. And his research primarily focuses on Iran, though he's also done other issues dealing with nuclear development. He's worked on some Track 2 diplomacy, and his latest book is titled The Iranian Puzzle Piece, Understanding Iran in the Global Context. And Amin has his PhD from NYU University. So please join me in welcoming Amin Tarzi.
Good morning. There we go. Please allow me to thank FPRI and the organizers for having me for the third time. Now I have a record. And I want to thank Alan, Tally, and Peter for the hospitality that they extended to me. It was amazing. And I want to make one little caveat. I am speaking on my own behalf, not on behalf of the U.S. State Department, the Defense Department, or any other entity associated there too. I was asked to speak about the grand strategy under the Ayatollahs. That was the title given to me. I'm changing one word in it. I'm talking about grand strategy under Ayatollah, only one. Because I honestly don't have the time to discuss Ayatollah Khamenei, which founded the Islamic Republic in 1979. So I put an outline there for you to kind of look at what I'm planning to look at. I will focus on post-1989. As you know, 89 is when first three major things in the Iranian context happened. It's the end of Iran-Iraq war, it's the death of Khomeini, and there is a change of constitution. So there is a shift in many levels in the Iranian strategy after the death of Khomeini. So in the Q&A, please, if you want to ask that question, we do, but I will not be focusing. I'll be focusing mainly on the person of Khamenei and then move on to today. It's not how is, it's who is. Sorry for that mistake. The second thing is, who is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the current supreme leader? His main strategy, dangers to the system or the regime. Then I go on to look at different approaches that he has taken from 89 until today, until 2013, on trying to achieve that the grand strategy. And then I will look at Rouhani's election and personality, and then look at the grand strategy as Rouhani, what I would call him as the crisis manager, that being post-June this year. In the Q&A, my hope is I'll try to leave more time for the Q&A, and my hope is we can discuss other issues, prospects of what's going on right now. There's, the talks, outside factors. I'll not discuss them directly in the talk, but you can talk about them. I only named 3 countries there, but there are more. Those 3, I think, are the major countries that are being discussed right now, namely Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Russia. Russia is not being discussed. In my view, Russia is maybe the most important country in this dealing. And then, if you're interested in the nuclear aspects of it, I can talk to you about that as far as whatever the open sources say, and I can point to you where those sources may be that you can look at. So who is Khamenei? There's a picture of him reading the Quran. He was born in 1939 in a average family. The first major incident of political impact on him was the 1953 ouster of Muhammad Mossadegh, or Mossadegh, if you want to be a Tehrani accent, and by the United States and Britain. Again, this has been mentioned over and over again. The United States has even, believe it or not, apologized for that. Madeleine Albright apologized during the term of Khatami in a speech at the Asia Society in New York. the Iranians still talk about it. You have to be a psychologist, a sociologist to understand why this issue is so important for the whole Iranian psyche, but also for this man in particular. There's a quotation from him. He actually said that in a speech in 2012. It's a much longer quotation. It says, it's interesting to realize that America overthrew his, here being Mossadegh, his government, even though Mossadegh had shown no animosity towards them. He goes on to say, but the interest of arrogance, that's what the term they use for America most of the time. Arrogance is what Khomeini referred to America as, the global arrogance. But the interest of the arrogance required that the Americans ally with the British. This is, I would say, underscores the part of Khamenei's psyche when he looks at America. The first word is Americans are deceitful, and they are not to be trusted. Here, look at Mossadegh. Mossadegh actually was very pro-America. When you read what he said, he liked the United States. The Iranian story is that he nationalized the Iranian oil, which at the time was controlled by BP, what became later on called as British Petroleum, and therefore the United States, i.e. through the CIA, working with the British, ousted him not because he was pro-communist or anti-American, although he had some pro-communist tendencies, but because, again, I'm giving you the Iranian side of it. It's a bit more complicated than that. Because he was against the interest of a company, an oil company, because he nationalized it. And that keeps on coming. When you read this man, it keeps on coming as a theme that the Americans are untrustworthy. Today, 2013, he keeps on saying the same things. And I'll come back to that, where there's a shift that's happened. He is also something very important to notice. He's not like Khomeini or a lot of the other Ayatollahs. He was a religious scholar with very, very close contacts with secular leftist scholars within Iran and outside. Somebody yesterday mentioned the Muslim Brothers, or as we call them here, Brotherhood. In Arabic, it's actually translated as Muslim Brothers, but that's not that important. The Muslim Brothers, he actually looked up to them. He's a Shia, but he actually translated books of Sayyid Qutb, 2 of them, and one he actually translated it with commentary. But he also was very, very close to Iranian intellectuals, which I would put in the very left, like Ali Shariati, which some people call him the Islamic Marxist, or Jalal Ali Ahmad. These were the main intellectuals of Iran at the time. He looked up to them. And I always say, as a joke in some of my talks, had he not been a Muslim, he would have been a communist. His ideology almost fits very much in the ideology of the 1960s liberation movements. He admired Che Guevara beyond, he actually sometimes wears things that have symbols of him. So you have to see where it comes from. But also this gave him an insight into not just the home, the religious teachings that he had to receive, but he had a much broader vision. Also, he actually gave a very long talk very recently, and he told, and it was actually to the students and seminary students, that you have to read Les Miserables. He said, that's the best novel ever written. And if you want that speech, he, by the way, has a website, which is in 17 languages. All his speeches are there. It's called, I can advertise that because it's open. It's called leader.ir. Simple as that, www.leader.ir. And the speeches are, not all of them are in English. And I have to tell you, the English and the Persian do differ. Sometimes my game is to look at, especially things that are political, where the differences come in. But this speech is there, and he says that you have to read Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. He calls it the best novel ever written. And also another novel that he likes a lot and always talks about is Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. He says that tells you where America's morality and America's promise actually fails. Yet at the same time, and this is very important, he believes that the West is doomed because of its excesses, but he's not anti-Western in the sense of, okay, the West has to be destroyed or Sharia has to be implemented in the whole world. He never talks about those things. Or Khilafat, for that matter, things that you heard more about from the Osama bin Laden types. It's almost non-existent. Actually, not almost. There's none of them. That Iran should conquer the world or Islam should conquer the world. He says the West has amazing advances. And he actually says Christianity has amazing advances, but the West has actually not followed the path of, as he calls it, Lord Christ. So it is a very interesting view of this. As I said, he would have fit also in Latin American liberation theology fold. He comes from that person. Social justice is his main thing. If you open his website, the main line says social justice, achieving social justice. And that always is the undercurrent of this thing. So just as psychologically, when he looks at America, where Khomeini, in my view, had a hatred that was instilled in him because of the jailings, and he always saw his views came in from more from the Savak, the secret service of the Shah, and what Savak did to him or to his family, and he associated that directly to America, where this guy, he was jailed, but very, very minimally. He wasn't tortured, so he had much more intellectual ideas, and for him, America's biggest thing is 1953, the Americans are untruthful. Whatever they say, they lie. That is the undercurrent. It's very important. Why am I highlighting that? Because now we're dealing with him. And this is how to understand. When you negotiate, you look at the person you're negotiating with. One word. If I had come here when Alan asked me, or Tali asked me, when grand strategy of the Ayatollahs, that one big word right there, regime security, nothing else. That is primary, number one objective of the Iranian regime right now. The Islamic Republic of Iran wants to achieve as regime security, i.e. continuity of the system that was ushered in February 1979 from external and internal threats. That is it. There's a lot of other things, but that is the strategy. They have a specific idea. Now achieving it and how to get there is where we all come in, either as scholars or as politicians or as soldiers or whatnot. And he believes, up to today, that the main goal of the United States is not change of behavior, but rather is a change of regime. And this is the point that we are still not meeting. He believes that the United States is not, when they talk about, and he goes on to a lot of these things. If you read him, my mornings usually are, because a lot of the sites I can't open on our computers at work, so I actually do some of them at home. I read what they're saying. And a lot of it is this whole idea that America is trying to defang them and then destroy them. The fangs being the nuclear potential. An example he's given is one is Mossadegh. Again, he keeps on going and saying, look, Mossadegh was not anti-American, but they kicked him out. He actually admired America, and he wanted to work with them, but they kicked him out for no reason, because of oil interests. Again, he sees it only for the oil. They're more than to that, as I said. The second thing he says is, he looks at the failures of past rapprochements. Past being here with the two presidents after him. And he never really tried rapprochements, but after him comes Rafsanjani, and I'll discuss that, and then Khatami. He says, look, they tried very hard, and the Americans slapped them. He even talks about oil concessions, which was given by Rafsanjani to a U.S. company, Texas-based company called Conoco, and that was pushed out because at the time there was Al D'Amato from New York was pushing what at that time was called the Iran Sanctions Act, and then later on became ILSA, Iran-Libya Sanctions Act, and say, so look, we try to even bring their people on our soil and give them a very good deal on Conoco. Conoco was actually a pretty good deal on the paper, at least. And then he talks about Khatami. He says Khatami smiled and went there and talked about breaking the wall of mistrust. And look, we got nowhere. And then he got the axis of evil speech. So he keeps on going and talking. See, whatever we try to soften, they harden, because it's not that they want us to change and become nice, but they want us to destroy the system. The last one, and that is very interesting, and that's why I brought you some paper. If you want more of those things, by the way, that's all available to you. It's your tax money anyway. Just ask me, I'll send you more. It is the fate of Muammar Gaddafi. He has, in the paper that some of you may have there about Gaddafi, a colleague of mine wrote that, he goes into great detail on saying, look what happened to Gaddafi. That's a quote I got to him, you can read it there. He basically says that Gaddafi gave up his nuclear potential in order to safeguard his regime, which he's actually right on that one. And look what happened to them. The minute he gave up, a few years later, he actually uses one time, he said they killed him like a dog in a ditch. But until he had his nuclear potential, nobody touched him. They dealt with him. Again, you could argue, we can argue about this. I'm not, right now, by the way, I'm not here saying this is all correct. I'm just trying to give you a different side, as Seneca said, audi alterum partem. Here the other side. You see their side, where they're coming from, because if you negotiate, unless you hear the other side, you can't have a negotiation. We are now negotiating. Our president has a phone conversation, and our Secretary of State has met their foreign minister. So we are engaging. If we engage, we better understand what the other side wants. Because the worst negotiation is when you don't have any idea what's going on. Whatever policy you have, you need to know what's going on there. So they look at Libya, and they have to actually give case of Pakistan and DPRK, i.e. North Korea, as countries where the United States respects them because they have nuclear weapons. And the Iranians go as far as saying, I actually have a paper, if you want, I'll give you, that the reason the United States went into Iraq in 2003 was because the United States was 100% sure that Iraq didn't have nuclear weapons. Had they not been fully sure, they would have never touched them. So there's this notion, right or wrong, that the United States of America respects either the position or the attempt to possess of nuclear weapons and will deal with you as a big power, or at least somebody on the same table. Once they take it out, you become like Gaddafi. Again, please think about that. When you're negotiating with a country that thinks, and as I said, unfortunately, the behavior out there illustrates that there's a respect. What North Korea has done, any other country would have done it, would have been pretty badly damaged. Yeah, I understand that they have a lot of weapons pointed at Seoul and all that, but North Korea is basically flaunting its nuclear potential. It's lobbing rockets right over Japan and threatening sinking ships, yet they don't get punished. This translates into the outside world in one way only. Nuclear weapons get you respect and protection from the United States. Goes back to the idea that I said about regime security. So this is where we are right now on this one. I give you another thing. There's an external threat to the Iranian system. And there's the chart for you. Those of you who work on revolutions or uprisings, that bulge in the middle is not a very good thing for anybody having a revolution. First of all, look at the age group. The Iranian Revolution happened in 1979. The majority, the vast majority of Iranians were not even born. So you have 66% of Iranians who, for them, the Shah is just a page of their history. As one Iranian told me recently, very recently actually, and she said, it is, she even, these people, she said, they will pass. In our history, the Islamic Revolution some year would become 2 pages. They have a long history, they're very proud of their history, but most of these people, the Shah is nothing for them than history. What are they concerned about? Well, population is right now about 80 million. There's a good population growth. The problem they have is that there's unemployment, and that unemployment rate you see there is official. It's much more than that. Some people even put it at 20%. And then look at the very last statistic. Revolutions do not happen in rural areas. If it happens, it's very slow. It can be contained. When you have 71% of your population all in small and gathered in cities, you are looking at time bombs. And they saw a time bomb in 2009, so-called, or what people call it, the Green Revolution. It's not that they are just worried about the United States or one of our allies or somebody attacking them. They are worried about a combustion, internal combustion of Iran. And they also, yes, think that the United States and some of the allies do affect or try to manipulate the internal situation in Iran. So He is right now looking at two problems. One is this threat. He believes that the United States and some of the allies, Israel namely, but Saudi Arabia also, are keen on removing the regime out of power. Secondly, he looks at that and says, okay, there are two potential dangers to him. So the strategy again becomes, what's the grand strategy? Just to basically save the regime's survival. I'll be very quickly over this one. So, what has he done about it? He himself, Ali Khamenei, was the president of Iran until 1989. 89, a person who I consider him a pragmatic conservative. And if you want, I can deal. In Iran, there are no such thing as political parties. There are these political ideas. Everybody knows where somebody belongs. They're very fluid. But in Iran, and those who look at Iran, you categorize them. Iranian media categorizes them, but nobody is carrying a card that I'm I'm a conservative pragmatic. But it depends on what trend, they call them these trends. You fall in and then you are categorized under that. Which newspapers endorses you and all that stuff. So Rafsanjani is not a cleric, although he bought his title of Ayatollah, which sometimes he uses, sometimes he's not. He's a merchant. He's apparently the richest man in Iran. And he, while conservative in his views, he's a village person. He comes from a small village called Rafsanjan. His father made money from pistachios. He has much more money than pistachios now. He wanted to deal with the United States. After 89, they got worried about the U.S. They saw the U.S. power. They were very weak. They didn't win a war, they just had a stalemate. As Khomeini had called it, they drank the chalice of poison. But he wanted to come closer to the US under their own terms. And in the view of Khamenei, that failed. The second one, of course, was the smiling mullah, Muhammad Khatami. While he was a cleric and a Sayyid, but in the Shia tradition, if you wear a black turban, that means you're related to the Prophet, either through one way or the two ways. If you're through mother and father, then you are called Tabatabai, which means your father and mother both go to Muhammad. Khatami wore the black turban so his name started with Sayyid Muhammad Khatami, as is Sayyid Ali Khamenei. So they are both clerics, not only clerics, but from the line of Muhammad. Whether you believe it or not, they believe it. That's what matters here. He was a strategic reformist. He is maybe the only reformist, if you want to put that term, in all of these people. He actually wanted to reform Iran both from inside and outside. He opened up, those of you, I don't know if you've seen in the Iranian cinema, the good Iranian cinema that came out is all through that period, 79 to 2005. He opened up, he allowed women, so women were a little bit more relaxed. There was not as stringent observance of making sure that hair doesn't show up. One other note on both Rafsanjani and Khamenei, their conservatism usually shows up in two things very much. One is on women's rights. Somehow they're obsessed with women. Hair, I don't know what hair does to them, but I guess it does something to them. And the second one is the issue of Israel-Palestine. They are some Iranians call them more Palestinian than the Palestinians. Whereas Khatami was more relaxed. Khatami basically said more than once, he said, whatever the Arabs agree, we agree with it. That was his idea. If the Arab League, the Arabs, at that time you had the Taif agreement coming out, he said, if they go with it, we go with it. Pretty much, whatever the Arabs go, we go. And it was a safe bet for them because the Arabs weren't going anywhere. There was no peace process. So he was just basically jumping into the bandwagon of not Egypt and Jordan, but the rest of the Arab world. He, of course, failed. And in view of Khamenei, it wasn't because of the internal failures and internal threats. He thinks he failed because the West did not shake his hand. When he extended his hand, he did not receive the hand. And then he takes a gamble. The gamble is to go with a very unknown figure, not very important in the revolution. He was very young at the time. Not a cleric, by the name of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. He basically gained his reputation as mayor of Tehran. And he was a thug. Some people even say that he was involved in some killings in Austria or whatever. But he wasn't one of the founders, if you go, founding fathers of the Islamic Revolution. He was basically a foot soldier, a thug. He brings him in there. The calculation, again, these are my own calculations. I may be totally wrong, but I think he calculates, he says, look, if they didn't shake hands with Khatami, let them give them some real taste of what else is available in Iran. He comes in, we all know about him. He starts right off the bat, his first thing that he does is he starts this whole, not only anti-Western, anti-Israel, which is kind of part of the Iranian daily routine, but he starts a conference that the Holocaust didn't exist. That has never happened before, but he actually has a world conference. And he keeps on talking about the scientific studies about the existence of the Holocaust. And, you know, he has all these weird people, I don't know where he gets them from, and he has this, I know, he had a conference. And he goes and gives speeches about, you know, in the UN, he said that when he was speaking, he saw that everybody else, when he was at the podium, that everybody else who was listening to him was glowing because the Mahdi was working through him. So he came in with this. A lot of what he said, I think it was a scare tactic. Did he believe in it? I don't know. I never sat with the man, but a lot of it was almost comically stupid, which I thought it was by design, not maybe the fact that this guy was that crazy. I don't think he was crazy. I think it was partially, there was a way to put this man out there and say, look, we have a person like that, and I call him revolutionary nationalistic. Ahmadinejad's background comes from mainly the Iran-Iraq war. Those 8 years are the formative years for Ahmadinejad. In those years, he sees betrayal, he sees the death of his people, the humiliation of his country, and he becomes not an Islamist. He was never an Islamist. He is a revolutionary. He believes in the revolution because the revolution is a nationalistic way that puts Iran, as he called it, the only free country in the world other than the United States of America. And then he said, no, it's the only country free because the United States is a stooge of Israel. Therefore, it is one country in the world that is free, and that is Iran. So it is this nationalism of Ahmadinejad that the revolution actually becomes an instrument to greater Iran. When he brings Putin of Russia to Iran, he doesn't greet him in Tehran. He actually flies him to Pasargad and takes him to Persepolis, the palace of Cyrus. Actually, it is Cyrus built it afterwards, Darius. And you know, the reliefs that you see always, and he puts the podium right there. You think that's a message? Look where we come from. This is our background, where people bring gifts from us from all over the empire. You're dealing with empire. Yeah, you may have Russia. And that's the message. It's not, you don't have to say it. If not, why you bring the president of Russia, fly him all the way in the middle of a desert in Fars province, and you have your background as the steps of Persepolis. So with Ahmadinejad, because Ahmadinejad is internally very disliked, and he actually loses the election, Khamenei takes an amazing gamble. He says, when Khamenei actually jumps into the ring of politics. Before this, he is outside. He is more, I always use a boxing analogy. For the first two elections, he is, I don't know, I'm not a I don't know about boxing much, but maybe there's some kind of a boxing association somewhere in some country, maybe it's in Cleveland or whatever, I don't know where it is. So that place, that's Khamenei. He's not in the room when the match is taken place. So here you have the match, and I am the referee. And then you have, I think the panel is 3 people, right? Judges. So if the referee makes a mistake, he's not inside the ring. He's not the 3 people sitting there. He is sitting in the head office, wherever it is, and will make a decision only if all of these people fail. Well, with Ahmadinejad, Khamenei not only comes in the ring, he actually takes a punch. When the elections are botched in 2009, he uses that word right there. He said that was by divine assessment that he won. Who's the divine assessment here? He is the Wali Faqih. He is sitting there waiting for the Mahdi to show up. So he actually gives himself a divine power. He is the one who makes him president. And this nearly backfires. If I had spoken, I don't know if those of you who were here 2 years ago, I was talking about the demise of the regime because of this. Because internally, what happens is that the supremacy of the supreme leader disappears. He becomes part of the game, and thus his power actually, while he wins the battle, to use the old French general's terms, he loses the war. And he was about to lose the war. And please listen to this, because I don't think Rouhani comes from nowhere. He is there to secure the regime. He's not somebody from the outside that we are all surprised by. Ahmadinejad and the gamble nearly cost the regime internal collapse. And had something not happened, it wasn't because we would have gone after them. It would have collapsed on itself. And Khamenei understands that. And his powers are being diminished. He doesn't become anymore the supreme leader. He becomes equal among certain centers of power. The presidency and he become almost not the same, but they're actually talking at each other. Not as a four-star general telling a captain, do that. No. And you can see the language. And also, it's the rise of the military, the IRGC, the Islamic Republic Guard Corps. So, because of this, enter Rouhani, and here I will stick my neck out there. Most of my colleagues who work on Iran will kill me for this. I do not think Rouhani won as a surprise. Here, I'll become a conspiracy theorist. I think Rouhani was meant to win and not won as a surprise. Without him, this regime would have been in a very, very dire straits. Khamenei would not have gambled on somebody that could have become another unbridled person. Very briefly on this one, these were the candidates that were remaining at the end. And if you want, I have a slide for you how the system of Iranian democracy, theocracy, whatever, it is a mishmash, works. 686 people put their names to become candidates. Of them, only 8 were allowed to run. Those are the 8. 2 of them withdrew, these 2. So you had 6. Of the 6, the ones in purple were hardcore Khamenei people. Everybody thought that the first one, Saeed Jalili, would win. At least on this one, some of us are on record that I said that would be disaster for them internally. The perception was that was Khomeini's man. Yes, he was. He was Khomeini's lackey. Sorry, Khamenei's lackey. But he was not that different from Ahmadinejad. Maybe not as loose-mouthed on stupidities, but he would have been the same way. The second guy, much more, he was a former foreign minister, Ali Akbar Velayati. He has been Khamenei's, basically his foreign advisor for 14, 15 years. Again, a man who would have been very much from his office. He didn't want this guy either, because he is too attached to the center of this power. And again, the perception that Khamenei should not have all the power and run the show, but be a guide here. The 2 guys in green are directly related to the IRGC, the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps. By the way, again, even New York Times uses Revolutionary Guard. The name does not translate to revolutionary. And this is important. They are not a revolutionary force. Revolutionary force means something in motion. They are a stagnant force supporting a revolution. In Persian, it translates to Islamic Revolution Guard Corps, simply as that. They are not revolutionary. They are a corps that protects something that has already happened. They are not something that is in motion. Anyway, those 2, one of them, Mohsen Rezai, was actually the former head of IRGC. So there goes. If they had won this thing that in Washington, if you came to Washington 2 years ago, from our top leaders to all of the wongs would say the IRGC has won Iran. Well, there were 2 IRGC guys. One head, and Ghalibaf is one of their biggest leaders. Wounded warrior, he fought against the Iraqis. They did not win because, again, he did not want, Khamenei did not want, in my view, to put IRGC on top because that diminishes his power. The other 2, this guy, he was so unknown, nobody even knew where he existed from. He just was there. If he had won, he would have been very unknown, and he would have not won anyway. He got, I think, 1% of the vote. There's Rouhani. Rouhani, and let me show you who Rouhani is. That is his resume. and this is not from me, this is from his own website, by the way. I did his website and a couple of other Iranian websites. This is 100% from Iranian side. With that kind of a resume, you think he's an outsider who just showed up there? Just read that. If you want to tell me what those things mean, I'll let you know what they are. I will explain the first one to you. That's very important. In 1966, as a young student, by the way, his name is actually not Rouhani. His name is Hassan Fereydun. Fereydun is an old Persian name from the Shahnameh, from the pre-Arab name. Rouhani simply means cleric. That's all. That was a nom de guerre because he was trying to hide from the Shah's people. He was a warrior for this ideology from the get-go. And in 1967, he publishes, and one thing about him is we know him very well. If you read Persian, he is an open book. He has written more books. He has written 17 full-length books and literally hundreds of articles. He has 2 biographies, autobiographies. He's a very prolific writer. If you know Persian, he is there. It's what, you can't hide him because he writes everything and is right there. Ahmadinejad did not write a single line. I don't think he could write anyway. But this guy is a prolific writer. I'm sure that by now you know that he has a PhD from Glasgow or somewhere in Scotland. So he knows the West, but he is a very ardent part of the regime. Why is the number 1 important? Those of you who work on Islam and Islamic ideology, the word imam has a very different connotation between Shia and Sunni. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because that's not part of my work here today. In Sunni Islam, imams means nothing. It means somebody who basically leads the prayer. The word imam comes from Arabic, which means front, that's all. But in Sunni Islam, imam is anybody, actually any male can become an imam and lead the prayer. That's all, that's about it. In Shia Islam, imam has a very, very important word. Yesterday you had a good explanation about what they were called the 12ers or Ithna Ashar. The Ithna Ashar refers to 12 imams. This is Ali, Hassan, Hussein, all the way down to the last one, which is Imam Ghaib, or the imam who's in occultation, i.e. the Messiah, Mahdi. Those are the imams, the children of Muhammad through Fatima and Ali, or line of Muhammad through his daughter Fatima and his first cousin Ali. Nobody in Shia had used the word imam for an individual other than those people. They are divine. They are nahi and tahi. They are pure. Rouhani, by putting that word to Khomeini, is actually giving him a title that was not bestowed on an individual in Shiism who is not part of that hierarchy. Very important aspect. The word imam is still controversial. There are Shias, for example, you will never, ever, ever, if you go to Najaf, and let's say read the writings of Sistani or anybody like that, or even Shariat Madari within Iran, you would never see the word imam applied to Khomeini. They call him Ayatollah, Ayatollah Uzma, never imam. That is a very important title. That also gives him this whole concept of Vilayat Faqih, which he had written a book about at that time. Again, I'm not going too much, but this guy is not from the outside, folks. This guy, member of the Supervisory Council of the Islamic Republic, broadcasting. Khomeini's first word was, the military and the broadcast has to become Islamicized. This is almost as he came to Iran. And guess who's on top of that? Well, he's a member. Member and head of the Supreme Defense Council. Look at the years there. Member of the Supreme War Support Council. Head of the Khatim al-Anbiya base. Those of you know the Iranian military, Khatim al-Anbiya today is the one that has all the non-conventional weapons in it. Commander of Iran's Defense Command. Look at the year. Again, the Iraqis were much more superior in Air Force, and they were lobbing more rockets. More rockets were fired in the Iran-Iraq war than any war in the history of humankind, by the way. Deputy Commander-in-Chief of all the Iranian forces. Look at the year. What is the importance of that year, people? 88, 89. That's when they're withdrawing. That's when they're deciding to leave it. Who does... they put in charge of all that. That man. One of the most important moments in the Islamic revolution is the Iran-Iraq wars ending. Who's in charge of it? None other than our sheikh here. Head of Supreme National Security Council, 1989 to 2005. Supreme leaders, representative to Supreme National Council. So he's not Khamenei's man, right? No, he's not. He's coming from somewhere else. Member of Assembly of Experts, and he's a member of the Society of Combatant Clerics. That doesn't mean the ninja clerics. This is a group which actually is very interesting. The combatant clerics are almost a socialist-minded group of Iranian clerics, one of these unofficial parties. He's a member of that, even though they did not endorse him for presidency. And this very more important issue, he has no apparent social base of his own. He is married to the system. My view, again, I still stick to it until somebody proves me otherwise. He was chosen to be there, not won by surprise. And his job is to deal with the United States to safeguard the regime. His own words, the third is not his own words. The other three are his own words. One actually from my own Twitter account. Read that, 2003. And I will read this one, 2004. While we were talking with Europeans in Tehran, this is when he was the top negotiator, we were installing equipment in part of the facility in Isfahan. He's talking about his nuclear facility. In fact, by creating a calm environment, we were able to complete the work in Isfahan, Rouhani 2004. Just read that. In fact, by creating calm, we were able to finish the work in Isfahan. Isfahan is where the centrifuges are. Look at the first one. The fundamental principle of Iran's relation with America, our entire focus is national strength. Strength in politics, culture, economics, and defense, especially in the field of advanced technology. What do you think advanced technology means? It means only one thing. It's the basis for the preservation and overall preservation of the system. I can't overemphasize it. It will force the enemy to surrender. This is the strategy that Rouhani's foreign ministry put on their own website. These are all from their sites. I did not make these up. 7 August, just now, foreign ministry's short-term operation strategy for nuclear negotiations. Change the global security environment by breaking the coordination of major power and neutralizing the Zionist American efforts to build an international consensus against Iran. There you go. You don't have to dig deep somewhere else. To break the international consensus. And lastly, yet his good side, that's his Twitter account. By the way, he has a Twitter account. That is his, as the sun is about to set in Tehran, I wish all Jews, especially Iranian Jews, a blessed Rosh Hashanah. Ahmadinejad would have never, ever said that. That is what you're dealing with this guy. This guy is very sophisticated. This guy is not a nutcase. This guy has one job. I'm not saying he's out to go and destroy the world. Please hear me. It's not there. His job is to preserve the Islamic Republic of Iran as it stands right now. And that's where he comes from. By the way, you can have these slides. These are all for you if you want to. And the sources are underneath him. Okay. What's the grand strategy? Domestic issues. First is domestic. Don't think Iran is not like the United States. They have the same issues we have. We forget about the domestic sometimes, but domestic is the most important aspect. The first and foremost, in my view, is the revival of the prestige of power of the Vilayat Faqih. Who is the Vilayat Faqih? The Supreme Leader. I use that word here specifically because they want to reinstate that he is, the term literally means somebody who's sitting for the faqih, or acting at behest of the faqih, of the wali, a cleric who's sitting for the Mahdi to come in. And that is the basis of the Iranian Islamic system, authored by Khamenei in a book in the 60s, actually. Second is economy. I looked at a lot of economic statistics. That one line will give you something. Last decade, budget multiplied by 8, prices by 5, yet oil revenue decreased, and with the sanctions, now it's half. Just calculate that. Iran is in dire straits. They're not coming to the negotiating table because they are nice. They are forced to come there. The sanctions actually have worked. Why they have worked? Because it's been coordinated. For the first time in history, we have managed to have the Europeans. The Chinese and the Russians still cheat here and there, but at least they have signed on the same Security Council resolution, so they can't cheat overtly. They do cheat quite a bit. Maybe I should. Anyway, but Europeans are on board. Even Indians, countries that used to be more relaxed, are not. And this is job number one. So, move to the center and moderation, reconcile reintroduction of technocratic cadre to the government. Controlled openness. This is his word, not mine. Controlled openness. Another thing they're very worried about is Ahmadinejad brought all the cronies. Anybody who said Ahmadinejad is good or kind of was his own idea, that's my time. I'm running out of time. Okay, I'll take 2 more minutes. This is the last one. International issues. Strategic, and that's again his words, not mine, constructive interaction and moderation abroad. This, and this is very important again, for the first time in the history of Islamic Republic, this approach has been endorsed and approved, blessed, if you would, by Khamenei. He is calling it heroic flexibility. Those of you who are Iranian historians, almost the same words as what happened in 1988. He called it, his predecessor Khomeini called it drinking the chalice of poison. He is calling it heroic flexibility towards America, Khamenei, and guess who's in charge? Same man. Same man. Islamicize the message as a counterbalance to domestic hardliners. Now they're talking that the message of peace that Rouhani delivered in the UN was actually an Islamic message, because inside Iran there's right now a lot of opposition, as is in our country. Right now they're ordering all the anti-American billboards to go out. There are people who are putting it on the street every night, and then they're removing it as we speak. They're actually, the day before yesterday, and I have it there in Persian, I can read it for you, an Iranian paper looked at this whole negotiation. Somebody here yesterday had the Battle of Karbala, and they say that Yazid was the head of the opposition to Hussein's forces, the Umayyads. They're talking that the United States is Yazid, and they're going to kill us, and we are outnumbered. So there's opposition within that. So right now they're trying to do that, to Islamicize it, that this is actually a good thing. Engage U.S. in talks at the highest level on nuclear file. And he is fully empowered. Again, these are words coming in. He's not shooting in the air. This is not Khatami where he would go home and Khamenei would say, well, this was too much. You smiled too much, my dear, with Amanpur. This is endorsed. This is the first time it's happened. Protect right to enrich for greater transparency and pledge to peacefulness of the nuclear program. That is their basic line. Their red line, if you would. I don't like this whole red line. Nobody in politics should draw red lines because you always cross it one way or the other. But their red line right now is enrichment should happen on the Iranian soil, not outside of it. Flexibility on Syria and Iraq, cooperation in Afghanistan. Expect that right now. They're even, okay, well, let's put it this way. They're going to be very flexible, very cooperative on Afghanistan. I won't go on details. Work on sanctions, sanction relief by splitting the current coalition. And by the way, if they split the coalition, if they overturn the existing Security Council resolutions, I will tell you right now, it will take something very hard to reimpose them. And because there is no Ahmadinejad, and because this guy keeps on talking about peace and sending Rosh Hashanah messages, Europeans will not come on board. And that's why I say, focus on Europe. He knows if he breaks it, and he's a good guy, he talks about, he's not, he actually is not denying Holocaust, he's sending messages, he's talking about these things, Europeans will be hard-pressed to come back. That is the strategy. That is the strategy. As I said, I'm leaving a lot because there's no time. I made that for you. This is the picture of Kerry and Jawad Zarif. This was in an Iranian paper 2 days ago. As you can see, there's a shotgun and a US flag, and this is it. This is exactly how the picture was. So there, this is the opposition paper. This is the hardliner paper, saying that Americans are negotiating, but they have a shotgun under the table. And by the way, my last word, honestly, that word comes in from President Obama's speech at the UN, 24 September this year. If you're teaching Middle East, I do not endorse government publications. If you're teaching Middle East right now, and we have a speechwriter here, whoever wrote that speech is a very, very interesting speech. Please read it and give it to your students. There's not a word about China, not a word about Iraq, not a word about Afghanistan. It's all 100% about 3 topics in the Middle East: Iran, Syria, and Arab-Israeli conflicts. That's it. And he said that word right there. So he is addressing, he knows what's going on, what Iranians want. We are not seeking regime change. That is our president. With that, I don't know if I have anything else. I don't think I do. Oh, no, those are just for you. Okay, I'm ready for any questions on that you may have. Thank you.
Thanks. You mentioned that Khatami was, or I'm sorry, that Ahmadinejad was useful for him in 2005. Why was he still useful a second time in 2009, if he had already proven that he could inflame?
Okay, that's a very valid question. 2005, he brought him in, but 2009, Ahmadinejad, as I said, had already become a runaway train. He had brought himself in a position that he had popularity beyond the control. And as I said, I think it was in Philadelphia that I was talking about how the two forces, let me go to this, if I may, to the slide that I have just as a, this is the best I could do in a one slide for you as how the Iranian government works. See, what you have here is the presidency is actually the Guardians Council, which is appointed by, approved by Khamenei, appointed, the black is appointed, make sure that the president is selected. So they select the number, the 8 I said in this case. When they looked at the people around, they couldn't find somebody who was strong enough to go against Ahmadinejad. And at the time, there was a personal feud between Khamenei and Ali Akbar Rafsanjani, who finally became the guy who was trying to push. They didn't want him. So Khamenei thought, okay, what we would do is we would go and gamble and bring in Rouhani. Sorry, not Rouhani. What's his name? Mousavi, which is the so-called leader of the Green Revolution. Who is Mousavi? Mousavi is related by marriage to Khamenei. However, when Mousavi comes in, there's a smell, if I would, of Khatami and the liberal, for Iran, liberal ideas. And they see that as a greater danger. So that's when he jumps, as I said, into the ring. So it's because of this amazing mass support by the youth, by the bulging youth I showed you, for Mousavi, and looking at Mousavi as almost a deliverer, and the speeches coming in against Khamenei. The very first time in the history of Iran, you hear Marg bar Rahbar, death to the leader, written on the walls. That is not only killing, that's pretty nasty things will happen to you in Iran. Until that time, you never hear it. So they see that as a danger to the regime from inside, and actually they see it as a part of a velvet revolution. He actually uses a very interesting term. He said, they're wearing their velvet gloves again, they being us. And they see that as a manipulation. So he actually jumps into the ring, because he at the time sees Ahmadinejad as the only force to quell this insurgency within the country. That is the reason. And it backfires, because while he, as I said, wins the tactical battle, he is about to lose the war. So it was this whole youth movement, unexpected. See, Iran has a very interesting thing. While there's a lot of controls and issues, once the elections happened, 2005 was very irregular, there's some transparency. I mean, in that part of the world, take Israel out, Turkey lately has been pretty good, India, of course, is okay. There are not that many countries that when the elections happen, I mean, as I said, there's a lot of control, it is a pretty open election. And when it comes to municipalities and all that, it's pretty transparent. So once the elections start and when they have Mousavi, they see Mousavi as a direct threat against not only the regime, they see it as a direct threat to the role of the supreme leader, because Mousavi makes one big mistake. He says that the role of Khamenei as Wali Faqih should be an elected office, not a selected office. So this is how I see it.
We'll take the next question from Michael, front.
You brought up Russia at the very beginning of your talk, and I was wondering if you could maybe comment just on what you see their role as in maybe the nuclear weapons moving forward.
Okay. My view is, I was hoping you asked that question because I left it, I just was timing myself in there. That itself is a big issue. My view, this is my personal view, by the way, I want to highlight this one. I do not think Iran would like to build nuclear weapons. Somebody said it here yesterday, to have it ready-made. Yes, that's what they want to do. There are two major aspects to building nuclear weapons. One is the fissile material, which makes things mushroom. The other one is to deliver it to a place that you want the mushroom cloud to come out. Iran has reached that point to make in-house right now nuclear material. Once you have a 20% enrichment, which Iran right now has 185.6 kilograms of enriched uranium. Israeli red line that Prime Minister Netanyahu drew was 240. They can go 240 in almost weeks. They are not going. So they are mindful of these things. They have 185. Why 240 is a big word? Because that is most scientists think that that's what you need for 2 full-fledged weapons to upgrade it. So what you have to do is you put the 20% more and more, spin it in centrifuges, you get 98.5, 98.6. Anything beyond 97, 98 is what we call weapons grade. There is no more technology needed. They need time and just refeeding. So they have the know-how. That red line that in 2005, America's red line was, those red lines we have put, all of them have been crossed. So they have that. They do not, in my view, want to enrich more than 20%. Where Iran lags behind, and this is very important, is the delivery system, platforms to deliver this weapon to a target. If you cannot deliver it, it's not the most useful thing unless you're a terrorist and you want what we call a dirty bomb. Unless you can deliver a nuclear weapon, the best we can do right now, US and some other countries can do smaller, what we call tactical nuclear weapons. For Iran, the best they can do right now, in our estimations, open source estimations, is a 700 to 800 kilogram warhead. An 800 kilogram warhead needs a very accurate missile. The missiles they have right now, none of them are accurate enough for that. The Shahab is basically nothing than a no-doing on steroids. It's old, actually it's a German technology going to Russia, from Russia to North Korea, from Pakistan, finally to Iran. It's getting bigger and bigger. It is a very inaccurate missile. You would not put a nuclear warhead on top of that because it could actually fall right on your own head, or on Saudi Arabia or on Makkah or whatever. So you would not lob that towards anybody that potentially will be an enemy. So, and that Iran is far away. They need time. So what they, in my view, they want to do is they want to preserve, that's why they say their red line is enrichment on Iranian soil, because they will preserve this idea of being able to assemble enough fissile material at 20% or less. They may even give up the 20%. Doesn't matter, because they need time then. But they have all the centrifuges. They may shut them down, but there's this destruction thereof. What is clear, if I were advising some people, I would say, make sure if we even come to a deal, make sure that we are very, very keen on trying to curtail technology on missiles. That's a whole different thing. On that, they're still lagging. So this is where they stand right now. What United States right now, our stated policy is that the United States will not tolerate Iran with nuclear weapons. Do they have it? No. Can they have it? Estimations is in 1 year, 1.5 years, they can have a nuclear device. What people don't talk about is whether it's deliverable or not. And that, I think, they're further away. My view is what they want to do is, as Rouhani has said, stop enrichment, try to break sanctions, and then work on missile technology, which they have not. There's something called MTCR, which is controlled as a regime to control missile technology. You don't hear it in Washington. I would advise, make sure that they do not get the delivery system, because Iran is not suicidal. We have seen that. It's not that they're going to blow up their own country. So unless they can deliver it, even if they want to reconstitute it, the threat becomes less. I hope I have answered your question on that.
I think I'll take the opportunity to ask you a question to explain a little bit about Iranian ambitions for the future of the resistance axis, and maybe you can also just explain the resistance axis to the teachers.
The Iranians, yesterday you saw this arc. One speaker put an arc of Shia arc. Iran is by the way, I think King Abdullah of Jordan is the one who actually came up with this whole arc business. I think Iranian resistance is beyond the arc. It is not all Shia. And this is something else. They have these groups, they call them freedom movements. Some of them we call terrorists, some of them we actually negotiate with, which they see as, again, goes back to social justice. And they go back, they have two stated aims. One is to create social justice within societies. Unspoken word is to protect the Shia and possibly even expand the Shia side. Second is, of course, to free Quds, Jerusalem. Those are the two stated objectives of this group. But the main idea is, in a way, while they don't say it, is to safeguard Iran from a distance. It's better to have the fight in Syria or Lebanon than have it on Iranian soil. It's better to have the fight on Pakistani soil or Afghan soil than have it in Iran. So they have these groups. And again, as I said, they're not all Shia. Look at Afghanistan. Who are the Iranian allies? Who were the Iranian allies in Afghanistan in the 1990s? Who are the allies today? Not the Shia. The Tajik, 100% Sunni. Actually, they gave missiles to the Shia to lob at the Tajik to lob at the Shia. And Shia have not forgotten that. So they are much more pragmatic than that. There's some of their allies I think they're not going to give up on. The ally that is right now the most, for them, useful and the heroes in their view is, of course, Hezbollah. Why? Because Hezbollah is almost, you can say it's a creation of the Quds force of the IRGC. If you want to read actually a very good article about that, recently the New Yorker, I think a couple of issues ago, had a very, very nice article. Dexler, I think, wrote it, about, and I put it in, and I think I put it on that reading list I gave you, on Soleimani, who is the head of the Quds force. The Quds force, Quds in Arabic simply means Jerusalem. That is the external arm of the IRGC. And Hezbollah was pretty much created by it. And this is their proxy bad guys. I don't think they're going to give up on Hezbollah. That is one of the causes they want. Hamas is another one that I think is a very easy bargain for them, because they don't really trust Hamas. It's a marriage of convenience that for them is very easily given away, and they're not going to be a lot of things. The big one is Syria. And this is where I think Syria has been always the client or an alliance between Iran and Syria from day one. An Arab once told me that Syria is a dagger the Iranians are putting in the heart of the Arab world. And this is why the Saudis are so upset right now. The Saudis' upsetness is not because, in my view, of Egypt. Egypt has a point to it. It's not because of other issues that we are doing right now. It is rapprochement with Iran even, although they're very upset with that. It has to do a lot with Syria. Because Syria is seen almost as Iran's, if you would, Iran's floating base or aircraft carrier within the Arab world, and close to Israel, of course. I would dare say, from what I'm seeing, again, I could be wrong, these are things that are very fast moving. Every day they're moving. Right now we have so many hurdles. They may compromise on Syria, not to give up on Syria. They keep on saying we are not like Americans, we don't give up on our friends, but to make Assad a less dangerous person. For example, on the chemical weapons, Rouhani in his speech in the UN actually condemned chemical weapons, even though a week before they said Syria does not have chemical weapons. But they were very quick to come out and say, okay, we were victims and this is a bad thing, and we support wholeheartedly the American policies on this. And as of yesterday, I keep on reading, and this morning I was reading it, they are becoming very close to the Turks, as of yesterday, on the Syria issue, because Iran sees Syria as a potential situation where even if Assad leaves, but they have assets there better than a Sunni-dominated, especially if that Sunni domination is supported by Saudi Arabia and is Hanbali / Wahhabi, they may give up on it. They are very strategic. on giving up that arc in order to safeguard the home country. So this is, in my view, the Iranian policy has always been the better, do your job as far away as, they blew up a Jewish center in Buenos Aires. Do it as far away as possible and make sure that you're not implicated. So far, it's very hard, except for couple of mistakes recently, to find an Iranian doing something. As a Marine, I can tell you, when our barracks were blown up in Beirut, we know who did it, but they were not Iranians. And then, again, this is pejorative, but this is from an Iranian, I didn't say it. He said, as long as they're Arabs, why should we go and blow ourselves up? So they use others to go do their dirty job. And this actually protects them also from being implicated directly. So the arc is there. I think this is the big thing. And the arc, of course, Iraq is part of it, the Shia Iraq. Even in Iraq, they're right now, in my view, they're willing to compromise if that means that there's a safeguard for their regime to survive. If they can achieve that, I'm not saying they're going to give up totally on the Shia, but they haven't passed. In Afghanistan, the Shia, they created a Hezbollah in Afghanistan. They called it Hezb Wahdat Islamiyya Afghanistan, Afghanistan's National Islamic Unity Party. They gave up on it because it was convenient at that time in '92 for them. So that's where it stands. It's very fluid right now. It's not as solid, and it's not as Shia as I think stated out there.
Any more questions?
I'm very intrigued by the socioeconomic indicators that you put up. The percentage, the 66%, I've seen it upwards towards 70, 75%, I think, of the population under 30, and the small percentage over 65. And just understanding the youth in Iran, and that the youth is not just following blindly behind all of this. I mean, the music scene and the film industry, as you mentioned. I mean, how are I mean, there's one thing for the regime to be looking for regime security. Are they looking for regime maintenance? I mean, how are they actually expecting to keep things as they are? I mean, looking at a lot of the countries in the Gulf that are investing in education and bringing universities in. And I mean, a year ago or 2 years ago, I know Iran was looking at just cutting off the internet and having an intranet only. I mean, how are they looking to cut this large group of their population off when they're not? I mean, they are very worldly, and they seem to be moving much faster than the regime is. How is the regime going to keep hold of that and yet still move their country forward?
Well, as I said, in my view, the threats to the regime or the system were twofold, and I put the economics and domestic first. The domestic is more important to them. They see also a lot of this internet and all that is being supported by our side, rightfully or not. Maybe we do support some of those, but they're very worried about that. And this is one reason the first question that was asked is that Ahmadinejad was seen initially, 2005, they brought him as a youth person, revolutionary, but he was totally on the off side. But in 2009, that's when the youth came out. Then when you saw that, people even in Oklahoma were giving them proxies, so they had the internet. And the Iranians have internet. I think on a funny business, when I think Prime Minister Netanyahu talked about genes, you should have seen the Iranian websites from the Iranian side. They're very nationalistic too. They took that. There were hundreds, at least I saw hundreds of Iranian girls showing their butts with American genes and showing, here, Prime Minister. They were most of them were very respectful, but hey, look, I'm wearing my jeans. And so they are very aware of what's happening. And this is one thing that the regime understands. That bulge could undo it without anybody using military force. And this is why Rouhani's whole idea is talking about moderation, controlled openness. That is more important to them. They have to take care of the nuclear issue, though, because they think if they don't and this thing gets out, somebody might do something militarily, which will, in their view, may end the regime as it stands or create a chaos that's not controllable. So once they do that, and why do you think Rouhani keeps on saying, I want a resolution in 3 months? Because he wants to solve that. Solve meaning he wants to stop the gun pointing at him. Once he does that, I think the main idea, and also he wants money. He cannot bring the youth to fore without money. You mentioned the Gulf. You know, does anybody of you have been to Gulf? Whether you like tall buildings or not, you can see some of them from the Iranian side. If you have good binoculars, or at least if you're in Kishim, you can see it. And they look at Arabs as subhumans, culturally. And here, for them, the subhumans having all that wealth and that amazing, you know, Yale University has a campus there, and Georgetown has one, and here they are not getting to that thing. So they're aware fully of that, and that's why they try very much to open up this controlled openness, tourism. You know what Rouhani has just proposed officially? A direct airline from New York to Tehran. He just proposed it. I'm not making this. Why you think that connection? He wants to say, look, first of all, make sure the West is not this amazing paradise. So they can go and come. They have already relaxed visas. So there are people coming, going back, not just to the US. US is a bit harder because we also have restrictions. But in Europe, they have relaxed it amazing. They also have relaxed it in the Arab world. So they want them to travel, but they also want to make their own country more lucrative. They're banking on certain things. One Iranian nation, we talked about nation and state. I'm very glad that we mentioned yesterday the difference between nation state, because there's a big, huge difference. And in Washington, they all put together, and that's why we sometimes don't see the differences, even politically. Iran is there was a time people were taught, okay, well, we can get the Azeris to rise up. Well, Khamenei is an Azeri. It is a pretty integrated country. The Baluch and the Kurds are separate, not just because they're Sunni, because of their ethnicity. The rest of Iran, including the Azeris, which are the biggest Turkic population, as I said, Khamenei is 100% Azeri. At home, he speaks Azeri. Actually, his Persian accent is with a Turkic accent. They are a nation state. They are very proud of who they are. And this is what I think the Iranian regime is banking on, that if we give them, yes, they are nationalistic, but they're not going to tolerate all of that. But if we give them some controlled openness, they move forward, and then they will just grow into the system. I don't know what their 5-year or 10-year or 15-year plan is. Right now, the plan is to give the youth some breathing room, basically. Openness, films. Rouhani has already talked about the death of the Iranian movie. They haven't had a great movie. So he's kind of hinting and bringing back the openness. Most of the big Iranian producers, one is in Kabul, Afghanistan, one is in France, I think. Mahmoud Baf, I think, is living in Afghanistan. So they have stifled them under Ahmadinejad. So they're opening a little bit, but they need money, which goes back to the nuclear thing to get the pointed gun out of them. They are aware of it. There are no quick solutions. When you have no money, pride can take you so far. After a while, Egypt has pride too, but look where they are right now. So, and I don't have a very good answer. They are aware, though. How they're going to do it, I think that is secondary. They're very aware of it, though. They're very aware of it.
Okay, we have time for one more very short question.
Actually, I had two. Very short. First one is, given the fact that the leaders are very interested in regime stability and survival of the regime, it seems that a lot of the focus seems to be talking to the United States. Shouldn't they be talking to the Israelis, since their trigger lines are a little lower, shall we say? The second question is, the Supreme Leader seems to be about, 74 or thereabouts? Are there any...
He was born in 39, so whatever that makes him. 1939.
My mathematics isn't that good. I believe it's 74, but I could be wrong. Do they have succession planning or anything else like that? Is he in good health? Is it something that could be of interest?
Okay. Let me ask you quickly on the succession plan. There's a system. The Supreme Leader is actually appointed by a group called, they're not here, Assembly of Experts. The Assembly of Experts is a group of 89 clerics, average age 80s. I don't know why clerics live, in most religions, they live a long time. Maybe God likes them, I don't know what. They are all very old, all men, and they will pick the supreme leader. So yes, there's a succession plan. And there are names that are being tossed around because there are rumors, again, nobody knows, he looks pretty okay. There are rumors that he is suffering from Parkinson's. Some people even say he's cancer. Obviously, all these leaders people talk about. But he will die. He's a human being, and he will die. Khomeini died. So yes, there's a system that this group here, assembly of experts, will pick it. Then it goes to Parliament, and Parliament will accept it. And there are names that are being talked around. And the top name right now, the person who really wants to become that, is Rafsanjani. I don't think today he would have had a chance. But there is another thing, going back to your question, is if somebody like Rafsanjani comes in, that actually could bring the system to less revolution type and more where the clerics are there by name, but they eventually go out. And if you read the history of revolution in Iran, Khomeini's selected successor was a guy who died, Montazeri. He actually did not believe in Walayat Faqih. He said that the clerics should be just not as supervisors, but just there as what Shiism used to be, as a source of emulation, not as a power to force, because he said until the Mahdi shows up, there can't be an Islamic regime. So there's a lot of, they're hoping to, see, the problem with Iran is that they understand that if there's not a gradual, those who think about the future of regime, if there's a gradual change, they may see their heads hanging on towers. Because usually the change, especially after this regime, they don't see it as a smooth landing. So yes, there is actually a system in that there. As far as Israelis is concerned, actually Rouhani has said he wants to talk to them. He has actually mentioned that he wants to talk to them, and he apparently had stated, the first one he said it openly, and the second one he was not happy when I think the Israeli delegation was not there when he talked. He said, well, I had a good message, why they didn't listen to it, but then he joked apparently. This was in one interview that I saw that somebody picked up my speech from there. So somebody, I'm sure they had a pocket. So he said he's willing to talk to them at any place. So he's not said no, which is huge. In a country that you supposedly don't recognize as existent, and you don't say it. You say it that that's not existent. And then he says he's fully empowered and heroic flexibility. So that is, right now, is the whole idea is that he wants acceptability. Because if the Israelis talk to them, that, in his view, I'm reading him right now, again, this is all my speculation, that means that, okay, Iran can deal with the regime if the regime is not hostile. 1, 2, 3, whatever the issues are, nuclear, lack of support for Hamas, whatever the lists are. Netanyahu's list is a bit more detailed. He says no enrichment at all in Iran, this destruction of the stoppage of Fordo, which is, and also basically 3 things. No enrichment on Iranian soil, taking away all of the 20%, making them into rods or the cookies, sending it back at 3.5 for research, stoppage of Iraq, which is a heavy water, and I think why Iran needs heavy water, that's beyond me. And then, of course, and they haven't said anything about that. So they may compromise on that if Israel compromises on enrichment on Iranian soil at a certain level. So there is room, but when he says he wants to talk to them, for him is acceptance. If you talk to him, then, you already have taken that one step. He picked up the phone and talked to Obama. I mean, again, he could have not done that without Khamenei. And think about this 5 months ago, 6 months ago, that a U.S. president and he talked. Whatever they said is almost irrelevant. But the fact that they talked for 13 minutes and 14 seconds, or whatever they talked, somebody has actually put the number of minutes in. And the Iranians actually put the text up. And our side didn't say, no, that was not the text. So it's pretty much all about nuclear issue. There's some jokes about traffic and all that stuff. So this is where we stand on that one. Thank you.
Okay, please join me in thanking Amin.